welcome to another class. We're not going to be stamping today, we're going to be drawing, but I'm going to show you other things about Procreate that we haven't covered before, and some that we've covered very briefly I'm going to go into a bit more detail about. So I'm going to start with sort of some of the things that we haven't done yet on Procreate, and then we'll get on to creating a grid. And I've just shared on Mighty Networks, I've just shared a link to grids that you can print out. So if you want to do it on paper, there's a site that has lots of free grids, all different sizes and shapes, and you can print them out and use them on paper. So I've suggested if you want to do that, you could print out the grid on a sheet of paper from your printer and then put the paper back in so that it then prints print the photo. So the inspiration photo, so that you have the photo and the grid together. It's just a bit easier than drawing grids. I mean, you can do this drawing, but it just takes a long time. So we'll move on to that in a bit anyway. So first of all, let me open, just checking it's working. Yeah. So I thought I'd start off by showing you Sktchy. I know some of you probably already use Sktchy, but I was going to show you some tips and tricks that I use for finding really good photos. So this is my app. It's actually called Museum now, or Museum by Sktchy. But because I joined it when it was Sktchy and used it for so long, I find it really hard to even think of it as Museum. Museum because it's full of muses is why they came up with that name. But I still call it Sktchy. So it always wants me to set up notifications and I won't. So this is the app. And at the bottom here, the icons across the bottom are the most important. So home, you get a feed of, so once you've joined, you can look at artists' work, and then if you follow them, they appear in your feed. So home is just a feed of all the artists that you follow, basically, and their most recent work. So I use this quite a lot for finding photos. So I follow quite a lot of artists whose work I like, and I will always, whenever I go in, the first thing I'll do is go down my feed. And if you look here, that is the inspiration photo. And if you tap on it, you get the inspiration photo. And I find lots of my favorite inspiration photos from that, because it means that other people wanted to draw it. So it was probably a good picture, it was probably well lit. So I will very often just go down. And if you want to draw it, you want to save it, you just click on the bookmark. And I'll show you where you can find those photos in a moment. So you just tap the bookmark and it will save it. So the first thing I'll do is just look down. I'll look at maybe the last, I don't know, 10 or 20 and decide, and I'll have a quick look at the inspiration photos. And if I see ones that I want to keep, then I'll just save them. So you just go down like that. So that's one way of finding photos. And if you post something, comments on your post appear here. So if you post something, it'll just appear there. There's all the comments on my on the things I've posted recently. So, but the other way of finding photos is by going to art. So I was doing this earlier, which is why that was open. So when you open up the art page, this is just everybody's art. But museum picks are the Sktchy favorites. So if you go down, you get all art. But I just go to museum picks and click on see all. And then you have all the most recent pictures. And I look for ones I like. And then I'll open them and then go look at the inspiration photo. And then save it. So I will just go down all the art here. So I go down quite a bit. So I was doing this earlier. I like that photo. So I'm going to look at the inspiration. And I've actually drawn that photo already, so I'm not going to save it. But so it's at first I think Sktchy is quite hard to find your way around. But once you get used to it, it's not difficult at all. So I like that one. I think I've drawn that one as well before, but I'll save it. So Sktchy will tell you that it's the inspiration tab where you find inspiration, but I actually find better inspiration by looking at other people's art. So, but if you click on the inspiration tab, you get all the photos in the order they've been posted. So the ones at the top here are the ones that have been most recently So these will be the most recently posted. I find it quite hard to find photos this way because there's just so much, and a lot of them aren't very good. So that's why I tend to go to see what other people have drawn, because I know if someone's drawn it, it's probably, yeah, not that hard to draw. So, I mean, that picture's pretty nice, but a lot of them, you know, a lot of these ones in red here, there's no way I draw those. So I find it quite hard this way. You have to work quite hard to find nice photos. Having said that, there's quite a few here that I would happily draw. So what am I looking for when I'm drawing? So if you start saving, then if you go to your profile, first of all, you get this page, which is the things that you've posted. But if you click on the bookmark, you get all the ones you've saved. Now you can see I've saved nearly 1,500 and I add some every day. So I've got plenty to keep me going for months. But if I go to the top, I can show you the kinds of things that I look for. What you look for will be different. Yeah, we all like to draw particular things. So I save photos that kind of fit what I want to draw. So what I like, I mean, you can see from this one, I like really well lit pictures where you can really see the face, and you can see here a lot of the tones in her skin. So I like ones that are well lit, where there are different skin tones in the skin. The problem, if I go back to the inspiration page, the problem with a lot of the photos on the inspiration page is people touch them up before they put them on here, and you can tell. So that looks like a touched up picture to me. That her skin is so smooth, it just doesn't, it's just not realistic. And there was another one somewhere. Oh, I can't find it now. But so I'm looking for skin tones, or I'm looking for, so this one here, I'm looking for something that's a bit different, because I get bored and I want to draw something a bit different. You can find other things on here. You can find landscapes. This is the robin that we use for our stamp. And that's the flower photo we used to make a palette a couple of weeks ago. So you can find, you know, there's lots of animal photos as well. There is a search function in inspiration. If you go to the inspiration tab and go to the top, you can search. So if you put in cow, it'll come up with all the pictures of cows. The search function isn't great because most people who post photos don't tag them. So it can be quite hard. It often doesn't work, but sometimes you just have to go through and look. So you can see here, I have very few black and white pictures. I've got one there just because it was a really good picture. But I don't like drawing from black and white, so I generally don't save them. I like drawing people with glasses and sunglasses. So I have lots of pictures here with glasses and sunglasses. I like ones where I really like ones like this with reflection. So if I see a picture with reflection, I'll save it. There was a while ago where I was drawing pictures with flowers. So I just saved, I've drawn a lot of them, so they're not here anymore, but these were two that I never got around to drawing. So I saved lots of pictures with flowers. And I like ones, here's a great one with a really good shadow. So I like ones with good shadows. So generally I just click on other people's art, and from museum picks, I can go down and pick one. So I can see that one's got lots of shadow. So I would probably open that and have a look at the inspiration photo, and it's a great photo.
Helen,
so yeah.
Is there, once you've saved these photos and you've drawn them, is there then a way to delete that picture?
Yes,
or does
you just remove the bookmark.
Oh, okay, thank you.
So if you tap the bookmark again, it will disappear. But the other thing you can do is, if you go to your profile and open up all these pictures, this is a filter, so you can filter, and it gives you the ones you've used and the ones you've not used yet. So I probably still have some that I've missed that I've used. It takes a while to load them. It always says at first you haven't used any, but then it takes a few minutes. Yeah, so those ones I've drawn and I've not got around to, so I can do that now. If I just tap the bookmark, they'll disappear. So if you're not sure, you know, whether you've got rid of one, you can just use that filter button to find one that you've used, because I guess it knows if you post your art. If you don't post your art, it won't know. So I post my art, and when you post what you've done, I go up to the top. Actually, I have to do it from inspiration. Yeah, it's the plus. Sorry, I was looking for the plus and couldn't remember where it was. So if you post art, it says upload art, and then it will ask you to find the art, but it will also ask you to find the inspiration photo. So you can tag the photo when you post it, and then it knows that you've used it. But you can just you can remove them yourself just by, if you look at one and think, oh, I don't think I really want to do that, you can just tap the bookmark and it will disappear. Every so often I do that. I go through, because I've got so many, I do go through them quite regularly and remove ones that I saved but now think I probably won't draw. So that's how to use Sktchy. There are other sites. So if I open up Safari and just go to Pixabay. So there's Pixabay and there's Unsplash. If you go to Pixabay, these are all free. So that you don't have to pay to use them. So they're copyright free. So you can search for, say you wanted to search for a portrait, then it will come up with portraits. Quite a lot of the ones now on these apps are AI. That's not necessarily a problem. You can draw an AI portrait, but you can go through these, and then if you decide to download them, it just comes up and says download. Occasionally, when you try to download, it'll tell you that you can only download it if you credit the person who took the photo. But usually you can just download it straight away. It helps if you're a member, because otherwise there are less steps. So if you join, and obviously it's free, then you can just log in and there are less steps, because when you download it, asks you various things. And yeah, you go, actually it's going to do it without a problem, but then yes, it gives you the person to credit, but you don't have to. It says the photos are free, but you can credit, or you can give him some money if you really like his picture. So that's how that works, and all the others work the same. So there's quite a few of them. I often will go onto Pixabay, especially if I'm drawing something that isn't a portrait. So if I'm doing an animal for a stamp, I would, if I can't find it on Sktchy, I'll go to Pixabay to look for it. So often when I'm drawing things, sometimes I'll go to all the sites until I find the exact thing that I want. So that's how you can get photos. So if you don't have Sktchy and you don't want to join, it's free to join. They have classes which are advertised at the top, which is how they fund that app, but you don't have to pay. I don't pay. I do their classes every now and then, just to make sure, because I feel guilty for getting free photos and I want to support them. So I will do their classes every now and then. And I think there's a subscription that you can have, but you don't have to have. I don't have it, so you can just join and use it. So the other thing I wanted to show you, so let's go to, I can do it in here, actually. You don't need to create a canvas yet. The other thing I wanted to show you is I talked about moving, finding pencils you like, finding brushes you like, sorry, and then putting them in a bespoke, you can put them in a bespoke, what am I thinking of? A set. You can create a new bespoke brush set, and you can move brushes from other brush sets into that, so they're easier to find. So I created this set that I just called DX, with brushes that we were using last week, some of the brushes, and I put the brushes I created into that. And I've just added these pencil brushes because I thought we might use those today, but I'll show you how I did that. So I don't find it that easy moving brushes around. So I only do it if I think it's going to save me time in the long run. So I wanted to use some pencils today. So they're in the sketching set that comes with Procreate. So, and I think I was going to use, I've got the 6B, and then I've got a streamlined one and a color burn one, but we won't be using those. We just need the 6B. So if you want to create your own brush set, you just press the plus. and it immediately puts in a new set, and you can change the name of it. So you can, so I just call this, I don't know, I'm just going to call it set, because I'll probably delete it because I don't need it. I've got a DX set. But that's how you create it. So you just put a name in it. And then if you want to move other brushes to it, so I'm going down to the sketching set. These won't be in the same place on yours, but the sketching set has a little pencil icon next to it, and it comes with Procreate. And I want to use the 6B pencil, but I don't want to remove that from here because I know I can find it here. So it's useful having it in the sketching set. So I'm going to make a duplicate. So what I'm going to do, sorry, I didn't need to do that, is just swipe it to the left. So you just swipe to the left, the picture of the brush basically, and you can see that it says duplicate. So I just duplicate it. And then I've got another brush, and I can move that into my setup here. And to move it, it's the same as moving layers, but it can sometimes, certainly on my iPad, it can be a bit awkward about which set it's going into. So to move it, you just tap down on it until it pops out. You can see there, it's popped out. No, it hasn't. It's not going to do it now. Come on. Oh, come on. Oh, there we are. It's done.
Holding it, right?
Yeah, I'm just holding it. Yeah, but as I
Mhm.
hold it until it pops out, and once it pops out, you can just move it. So I'm just moving up to the set. Now, in theory, the set underneath goes grey, and you just let go, and it goes into that set. But my experience is that doesn't always happen. Sometimes it goes into the set below. Oh, I think it might have done it. No, it didn't. It went into the one below. So I have to move it again because I don't want it there. So I'm going to do it again. I'm going to move it, and I'm going to try and get it to go in there. And if you miss that set and you hit recent, it'll disappear because recent is just your most recent brushes. So it won't be there. It's done it now. So the second time it did it. But quite often I have to do that 3 or 4 times to get the brush into the set. It will go in the set. So I always, if I can't find it, if it's not in the set, I'll always look in the set below to check if it's there. But if you're doing it at the top here and you happen to just touch the recent, it will make it disappear. So you have to go and do it all again. So it's not the easiest. I don't think it's the easiest thing in the world to do. But once you've done it and you've got a set of brushes together, it's much easier than hunting for them all. So if you were going to do a portrait and you knew you were going to you only ever use 3 brushes for your portraits, then it's worth putting them in a set. So that's what I did when I did the Spark Shop at Sketchbook Skool. I just put everything in one set. So I have some sets. I've got a set of erasers as well that I've created, which are just erasers that I had another place. The brushes I like to use as erasers, and I've just put them, I think it's right at the bottom actually, because it's easier to find there. So they're ones so that's the marker that's just comes with Procreate, but I put it in an eraser set. So when I'm looking for an eraser, I know that these will basically cover everything I want. So do move your brushes into sets if it helps. But it is a bit of a pain to do. It's not that easy. But you can do it. And I do it if I think it's going to save me time in the long run. So we're just going to, and you can rename them. So, because they always have a 1 after them once you've duplicated them, but you can get rid of that. You just tap on it, tap on the brush, and then go down to about this brush. And then here's the name, and you can just erase the 1. So I've just opened my keyboard and I'm just going to backspace, and the 1's gone. And then I know it's a 6B pencil. I think I've said before, but I very often increase the streamlining on my pencil, and sometimes I put color burn in because I like that. So I've got 2 other pencils, 2 other 6B pencils. One is streamlined and one is color burned. And I'll show you how to do that. I might as well. So for streamlined, sorry, go on, Sharon.
And what do they do? What do those features do? You explained it once in the
Yeah. Let me show you, before I do it, let me show you what they do. So if you draw with a regular pencil, you get a line, but it's a bit wonky. If you draw with the streamlined pencil, it will give you a much straighter line, and it smooths your curves. And the more you streamline it, the more it will do it.
Okay.
So it gives you nicer curves. So if you're doing lettering, All the people you see who do lettering in Procreate use streamline pencils, streamline brushes, because it's just much easier. Might be easier to see. That is automatically going into a curve for me. So you just get really nice smooth shapes. So we're not going to be using it, but it's there anyway. And the color burn one, probably I might need a different color. The color burn one basically uses the color burn effect to give you this. It gives you a darker color. So, you know, when we're in layers and you can change the layers, it's actually made it disappear there, but you can change the layers to different things. If you have a whole drawing with color burn, rather than having to set the whole layer to color burn, you can just set a brush. So if you don't want it to affect the whole layer, it's not showing because let me go to an image, a drawing that I've done. So if we go to this one and I make it color burn, I'd have to make the whole thing. That's all right. Let's just compress them down. I'm just going to merge them down and I can show you then. Merged. Merge down. Merge down. So now everything is in one layer. I'm just going to tap that. I mean, we'll probably use color burn next week when we're coloring the picture that we'll be drawing today. So I don't know why it's just making it disappear. It doesn't usually do that. I'm going to have to go to a portrait because I know it won't do that with a portrait. So this was a portrait I did recently. So if I go into his skin color and color burn it, you can see it's much grainier. It gets this kind of grainy effect.
Yes.
And that's what the brush does. So I use it quite a lot for hair because, so if I'm drawing, we'll probably use it for hair next week. So if I'm drawing, I tend to use it for hair, but it's quite different. You can't really see the effect here. But I'll show you when we're doing it. There you are. There you can see the effect. That's quite a dark green.
Okay.
But if I use that on normal, I've got it on multiply. That's my color burn pencil there. So if I switch is what I mean to say. If I switch and show you a so it's the same color, but it's not color burned. You make it a bit bigger so you can see the line. It's lighter and it doesn't have the grain that the color burn one has. So you can change them quite easily. So you just take your original brush, make a duplicate. So swipe to the left and duplicate it. Then open it. And if you want to streamlining it is easy. Streamlining, you just go down, click stabilization on the menu. And then here, where it says streamline, move it up. You can try it at different percentages. I tend to go between about 60 and 70. If you make it 100, quite often the brush will jump. It won't work very well. I find it works well between about 60 and 70. So I would usually put it on about 65, try it. So if we now go back and try and streamline, yeah, that's pretty good. But it's quite hard. When you streamline, it's quite hard to draw because it's automatically taking your lines and trying to make curves out of them. So not to draw, sorry, to write text, because it's trying to make everything into a curve. So streamlining, sorry.
Would you always have to duplicate the brush, or could you just each time go in and modify it before you used it?
You could. I would recommend duplicating it, because if you lose I think you can reset them actually. So even if you decided you didn't want it, I think you can reset it to where it was, but you can just have one. You don't have to have as many different ones as me. You could just have one. So if we go back to that one that's streamlined, you could also make it color burn, and color burn, trying to remember where it is. Yeah, here it is. So if you go into rendering, and this is on multiply and normal, where the blend mode says normal down here, it's the second to bottom thing there. Just change it, tap on it, and it will open up a menu. And I just go down and click color burn. And now you've got a pencil, and then you can just save it. And if you want to change the name so you know what it is, we can. So I'm going to put CB and streamline, and then I know that this is both color burn and streamlined. It's changed my CB to cab, so I'll have to go and change that. Streamline, but I don't want that. I want that to be CB. And it's being temperamental. CB. No. CB. There we are. So it's good to rename it, because then you know I've got a T in there I don't want, but we won't worry. Then you know that what you've done to that brush. So, but we're going to start with a 6B. I'm going to go out of this.
Helen?
Yeah.
So I'm looking at that menu.
Yep. I'll go back.
On the blending, on blend mode.
Yeah.
And I see the color burn. I also see something that says color dodge, and it just reminds me of this photography class I took a long time ago. So are these concepts the same as dodge and burn when you're developing photographs?
I don't know is the answer. I have no idea.
Okay.
And it may well be.
That's what it sounds like.
Yeah.
Does color dodge make it lighter then?
It might do. Yes, it probably does, actually. Because I'm
dodge
just
and
thinking
burn
usually the ones at the bottom make it lighter, and the ones at the top of that menu either multiply or make it darker. So yes, those are all going to be made. Quite often I see people who use the lighter color or the overlay there for doing highlights, which I just do straight on my picture. I don't really use those, but I have done classes where other people use them a lot. And this color burn trick I learned from an illustrator who always uses it for the hair in her drawings. And so I tried it and found that I liked it. So, but you can play around with those, but I think you can you reset brushes? I'm not sure. I'm just looking. Generally, I always make a duplicate because I'm afraid of, I don't know if you can reset them. So you can probably download them again because they're the ones that come with Procreate. But
well, I just noticed you can resize your stamps. That's why I thought maybe you could.
Yeah. And with stamps, I would just go in and resize them for whatever project I was doing, because that's the easiest way of using them. But with brushes, I think I'd always keep a copy of the original. But the stamps, it's really useful being able to do that. So once you've done a stamp, you can come into, is it properties that has the size? I can't remember. No. Oh yes, maximum size. So if you go into properties there, it's got maximum size. So yes, if you stamp it and it's too big, just come in here and make it smaller, because you're not really changing the brush here, you're just changing the size. So I would, every time if I needed it a certain size, I'd just come in and make it that size. And you can also here, it's quite useful, is orient to screen, so which means that he's upright. So if I turn that off, he hasn't gone on his side. When I drew it, he went in on his side in here. But orient to screen just make sure that they're always upright. You might not want that, but it's probably easier to have them all one way and then just move them with the move function. So
Helen, back to the rendering on the brush setting. So when I went in there, under render, there's rendering mode section and then the blending section. And what is I think I've tapped something in rendering mode, so I don't know what that's supposed to be set to.
Oh, it's set to intense blending. So it's set to the bottom one.
That's its default. Okay.
Yeah. And again, you can try these and see if they make much difference. I think with pencil brushes, they don't make that much difference. I think with bigger brushes, so paint brushes or marker brushes, you'll see more of a difference. But you can just play around with them. I like burnt edges mode as well, because it gives kind of a dark edge to things. So, but you can play around. There's luminance blending as well, and I don't know what that does. It won't anyway, it keeps turning back. But at the bottom there, I don't know what that does. All of the things I've learned to do, I've learned by basically other people's videos or taking classes. So it's the stuff that isn't covered in those classes, unless I've experimented and messed about a bit, I don't know. But I'm always happy to have a go and see what happens. But for today, we're going to create a new canvas. So we're going to go to the plus here. And so I've already got one that's 8 by 12. I'm going to use an 8 by 12. If you haven't got one already, to create a new one, you just click here on this folder icon. In fact, I can show you how to do it. And this appears. And here, if you want to create one that's 8 by 12, you need to change this to inches, which is easy enough. And then you can see it's already set for the width. So you just type in 8. And then for the height, just tap on where it says height. And then you can just put in 12. And it will give you an 8 by 12 canvas. It also tells you how many layers you can have. So, because the layers depend on the size. And I think it might be I don't know if it's the memory of your iPad or not, but yeah, for different sizes, you'll get a different number of layers. 58 is more than enough. Even if you've only got 20, I don't think we'll use more than 20. I have occasionally, and you can name your canvas if you want to. So let's name it. So I'm going to call it grid. And then I know it's going to be a gridded canvas. And then it will just open it. So we're going to create a grid from our photo. So the first thing to do is to go up here and click on the spanner. And then on add, which is the first icon in the menu. And you'll get this menu. And what we want to do is insert a photo. So when you tap that, it will open up your photos. So my photo, this is the photo we're using. It's quite a long way down in mine. So you have to find the image in your photos. And then once it's here, I'll give you a minute or two to find it. Once you've got it in there, you can come down here and you can do fit to canvas. And I'm going to make it a bit bigger yet, so it fills the whole canvas. So to do that, I'm going to come up to the corner where the little blue dot is and just pull the little blue dot out. If you just pull it in that direction, the picture will get bigger. And then you can hold the picture with 2 fingers, a thumb and a finger, in fact, and just move it so it fits the canvas the way you want it to. So I'm just, oh, it's just undone it now. So I'm just going to put it there. There we are. That's fine. And then when you've got it in there, you can just tap that button there. I've just realized, oh, I've just deleted it by accident. Come on. So if it disappears, you have to do it again. So I'm just going to move her so she fits. Trying to keep it as straight as I can. I'm going a bit wonky. That looks good. And then we just tap that blue and you'll see the blue disappears, which means that the photo's locked in the image. So then we want to add a grid. So what we're going to do is we're going to draw a grid over the photo, and then we're going to export the photo back, send it back to our photos, and then we'll create another grid. So let me just explain. Well, let me just show you how to do that. So I'm going to go up here again, and this time we want the canvas menu, which is the second one. So if you open up canvas, you'll see drawing guide. Click the drawing guide. So it appears, and you will probably have, like me, a very small grid on top of her face that is hard to see. So we need to do something about that. So we need to edit the drawing guide, which is here. It's right below the drawing guide button. So just tap on that and you'll get this edit window. So the first thing is that the squares, sorry, don't show up because the picture's so dark. So we need to change it, and we need to change the lines to white. So to do that, you need to get hold of this button. Yours will probably be somewhere in the middle. Mine's just there because I've used it before. So with your pencil or your finger, just tap on that little dot and drag it the whole way across. You'll see it gets bigger once you've tapped on it. If you drag it to the other end, you end up with a white grid rather than a black one, which is a bit easier to see. But it's still not that easy to see. So we're going to come down here and we're going to make it less opaque. I'm going to take it right up to the top. You can make them a bit thicker. But most importantly,
what color should the lines be in the photo? You want them to be white?
I've made them white because they're easier to see, but I might change them if I find that on her skin they're not that easy to see. So at the moment I've made them white.
Okay.
But you can have them any color along here that is easy for you to see. You don't have to have the same color as me.
Got it.
And we can change that at any point. We can just come back and change it. So we could use it for the outline and then decide that it's too light for her face, and you can come back and into here and just change the color and keep the grid. But the next thing I'm going to do is increase the grid size here, because these are so small that we're going to be drawing from these, and it's really hard. In lots of them, there's very little information. So I'm going to make it bigger. So I'm going to have it, so maybe, so where's 300? Actually, that looks good. That looks good for me. Maybe I'll go a bit smaller. You basically want some of the features to be inside boxes, so they're easy to place. But you can draw any grid.
How many pixels do you have?
Mine is at 331. So, but anywhere around the 300 mark would be fine. I'm looking at the color and deciding if it's a good color. So I might just go down and see if there's a better color that makes it easier to see everything. It's such a dark picture. Actually, the green is okay. So I've got it somewhere in green, in the middle of green, mainly because I can see her face features better if it's green. So mine is here now. And I just think I might make the lines a bit thicker again. So I'm coming down to the thickness here and making them thicker again. So now I can see each square in the grid very easily, which is what I wanted. So once you've got it the way you want, you can use smaller squares than me, or you can use very big squares. I try and have something in the middle. The problem if you use very small squares so that you can draw every tiny little feature, you can run into the problem that you end up with a very sort of realistic drawing, but with none of your style in it, because you've literally just been drawing the lines as they appear in the squares. So I make them big enough that there's something of my drawing going into what I'm doing. So I would probably make them bigger than this, but this is fine for the class. If you get too realistic, you lose your style, if that makes sense. So when you've got to here, you can click done at the top. And we then have that picture with the grid on. Now, if we export that picture, the grid will disappear. So if I send this now, so if I click on share here and send it to my photos there, then I think if I go to my photos, yeah, there's no grid. So we can't do it that way because the grid is a drawing assist thing. So it disappears when you share it. So you can keep that grid in right to the end and it won't show when you save your picture, but we want the grid. So I found the easiest way of doing it is to take a screenshot. So on the iPad, the screenshot is the power button and one of the volume buttons, and I never remember which. I'm just looking for my buttons on here. Where's they gone? There they are. So if you click those buttons together,
I can never get that.
No, see, I turned it off instead. I often have to do it. Let's do it again. I'm going back into Procreate. I'm going to try again. No, I'm obviously not pressing the right volume button. There we are. So it's the bottom volume button, the turn down button. And then what I have is a screenshot, which has disappeared, which I didn't want it to. But so if you screenshot it, if you go in your photos, it'll just be the last photo. So tap it and it'll open. Have you
found a way to do it that works better for me than trying to hold those itty bitty little if you come in from the I think it's the bottom left corner with your pencil,
will it screenshot?
Stroke up towards the picture and the picture will move and you can let go, and then it then has a screenshot. Then you can crop it. It allows you to.
I'm going to crop it now because it's in my photos. So if you edit in your photos and you want to crop it, you just go up to edit here. And the crop button is here. And the first thing you'll see at the top there, that's a little rotate button. So I'll just press that. Yours might be the right way up, but mine wasn't. So first of all, I rotate it. And then I hope you can see that there's like white edges in each of the corners that you can drag down to crop. So I just drag it from I usually go from that corner and then do the bottom corner. You don't need the other two till you've got your photo in there.
It won't let me use the pencil to do the cropping, but I can use my finger.
Ah, it might be how you've got your pencil set up in your
Pencil
settings.
Yep.
Yeah. So then you can just click done, and you've now got the photo with the grid. So then you need to reopen Sktchy. And well, yes, that will leave the grid. Good. I was hoping that this would keep the grid, so I'm going to turn it around. So go back into this photo, then go up to your layer menu and turn the layer off. And then we're going to go over here. We're going to add again. So over to the add button.
Wait, how do you turn the grid off?
Oh, over here. Sorry, I'll just show you. Over here, just click there until it's empty. Click the button. So it's got a tick in it. Remove the button.
Oh, that didn't. Okay.
Has it not worked? No, it's not the N. It's this little box next to the N.
Yeah.
So if you tap this box, there's a little tick in it when we can see the layer, and if we tap the box, it makes the layer invisible.
Okay, I think what I did was I took my screenshot and I've already created another canvas and imported the photo. And
okay.
when I take that little check mark off,
yeah,
it takes the picture and the grid and everything off.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to keep the original grid. So do you still have on your iPad, do you still have, if you go back to your gallery here?
Yeah, it has the one that I did a minute ago. Yeah. Is that what you want me to do?
Yes, yeah, open that one.
Okay, got it. And then go to the layer and click
turn off that layer. Yeah.
Okay, I got it.
The only reason I'm doing this is I want the grid to be exactly the same size. So if I do this, then I know that I've got a grid exactly the same size. And then if you come over here to canvas again, eventually these tools will become second nature because you use them all the time. So we want to click the reference button here, and it will give us a little box that says reference on it. And if you click image at the bottom there, you can import an image. And if you just tap import image, it will show you your photos, and we can just tap the picture of her with the grid on it.
The picture with the grid. Okay.
Yeah, we want the one with the grid because we're going to be drawing from that grid.
Okay.
And we know that this grid is the right size because this was the grid we used for that photo. So now I'm going to add another layer. And because I've got another layer now, I can remove that layer. So I'm just going to delete it by swiping to the left. You can keep it if you want to, just keep it turned off. Because it can be useful sometimes to turn them on. If you're drawing and you're making mistakes, it can be useful to turn them on, but you don't need to.
I don't think I'm going to be able to do this with you because I've got you on half of the screen and then it imported the photo right over the grid and I can't. So
oh no,
it's okay. It's okay. I will continue to watch and I will do it later. No worries.
That's the problem. They're never big enough for everything we need to do.
Well, yeah, that's true.
So I'm going to go. So I just tapped up here to open the palette box. Actually, we could create, should we do that? Should we create a palette from this picture as well? Sure. Because I was showing you how to do that a couple of weeks ago. We could do it again. So tap on the palette box. You need to tap down here to get this view to open. And then if you press plus, you tap plus, it says create new palette, and we can do new from photos, which is at the bottom there. Click new from photos and choose the photo, ideally the one without the grid on it. So for me, that's that one. And has it made me a palette? It's probably right at the top. Yes, there it is. So it said palette from image. So these are the colors that are in that image. It just picks, I don't know how big this is. Is it 30? I think maybe it takes 30. So it's just taken the 30 most used colors from that image. So now you have a palette to use as well. Now, if I do that, I don't do that very often, but if I do, I don't usually stick exactly to the same colors. I'll play around with them and change them, but that's fine. So I might use this color for doing the drawing, which is, I think, a dark blue black. It's not quite black. So what we're going to do is, if you go to your 6B pencil, if you haven't put it in a setup here, just go down to sketching. Go down to the sketching set, which has the pencil icon, and open it and just choose a 6B pencil. I have my favorite pencil. I've got a Blackwing pencil brush, which I love and which I always use, but I had to buy it. So, so when I'm working with you, I'll use one that you don't have to buy. I don't want to make you have to go and buy things, but the Blackwing pencil brush is great.
Too late. I already bought it.
You've got it. Good. Well, you can use it. You can use it then. But I feel like it's not fair if I'm using different
that's
brushes.
cool. I didn't realize they had Blackwing pencil brushes.
There is a Blackwing pencil, and it's great. I've got it here somewhere. It's in my illustration set. Yeah, there it is. I'll show you the lovely line. It just makes a really nice line. Oh. That one's a slightly streamlined one. So I'm just going to clear that. So, but we're not going to use that. We're going to use the 6B. So go back to my 6B pencil. There it is. And when you're gridding, so I'm just moving this box slightly in the corner just to make sure I can see the whole of her face. There it is. So if you just touch it with your 2 fingers, the borders disappear, the bit that's written, the menus and everything, and then you can just see the photo. And the idea with gridding is to draw what's inside each grid, or at least to use the grids to place the features. So I would use them to place the features. And I try not to be worried too much about being completely accurate, but I've just touched it and it's moved. So if I'm looking at the top of her head, I think already that's not right, is it? But so I think it's going down here. So you see the Blackwing pencil is quite dark and grainy. Sorry, the 6B. It's quite nice to use. So I'm just looking at where she fits, where her head fits in this space. And I'm not worried about it being scruffy. I'm doing it wrong, aren't I? Because there's a hole. So I'm just looking here. So I'm looking here at her hairline there. So there's a little bit in that box. I've gone too far across, so I'm going to have to start again. So apologies if you've been following me. Okay, I'm going to start just with lines then, because I'm getting it wrong. So if you count across 1, 2, 3, 4. So the edge of her head is 1, 2, 3, 4 is there. So I was drawing a bit too far over here. Yeah, so that's the top of her head. And then there. So I'm just looking here. And then her head comes down in this square to about halfway there. So I'm just trying to draw in her head shape. Maybe I should have started with the eyes, like I always do. It would have been easier, I think.
Do you normally use the grid like this, Helen, when you're drawing?
I would only use the grid if I was doing a commission and I was really struggling to get a likeness. Okay. So, but it's a good way. It's a good way of, if you want to get a likeness, it's a good way of doing it.
Yes, yes.
So, yeah. So if I'm doing something and I'm really struggling with likeness, then I'll use a grid. There's no point keep struggling if you're finding it really hard when there's a way of resolving it. So I'm going to draw her eyes because I'm finding it hard to do her face shape. So this eye here, I think it's because I always never do the face shape until after I've drawn the features. So this one is 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, so it's in here. I'm just checking. So I'm counting across the squares and it's in this square. So I'm going to draw her eye. So I'm looking to see, most of it is in that one square. It's probably a bit bigger than I've drawn, maybe, but that doesn't matter. So I'm not trying to be completely accurate because I want to have some of my own style. So it doesn't matter how scruffy this drawing is, we're going to get rid of it. I still haven't got the shape of her eye right though. See, I find it harder with a grid without. Because without, I just carry on. So let's try and place the eye in there. So somewhere like that. But you won't end up with huge eyes, which is something that often happens to me. If you do it like this, you'll know exactly. And also it helps you to understand the proportions, because if you look here, you can see her eye is about 1 grid wide, and the space between her eyes is about 1 grid wide, and the other space. So it helps with understanding those proportions, I think. So I'm now in the second box here, in this box, and I'm looking at where her nose sits. So it comes down from about halfway in the box. Actually, she's got quite a short nose. I would have made it longer than that if I hadn't been looking. So that nostril sits there, and you can see that the nostrils kind of sit on that line. And then the other eye is lower. So it's quite useful as well for if you're drawing faces that are on a tilt, which we know can be hard to draw. So I'm ignoring, these lines are in completely the wrong place, and I can see that now. So every time I'm looking at something, I'm looking at where it's sitting in that box. So that eye's a bit big because it doesn't go right to the end of the box. And I'm just erasing as I go to try and get the shape. Once you've gridded once, you'll then do a sketch over it using what you've drawn as your guides, and then you can be much freer. But initially, we're just trying to get everything in the right place. So this eyebrow comes from almost, so this one comes from almost at the top of there. It could be, you can get quite surprised as well when you're doing this, because features aren't where you would have put them if you've been doing it without a grid. Now I can see this nose needs to go slightly below, so I'm just going to adjust that. For me, it's really helpful when drawing a mouth, because I just struggle. I don't like drawing mouths. So it definitely helps me to understand the size. So if you're drawing a mouth, I generally find it most helpful to draw this center line first. So I'm going to ignore what I did there, because the center line then helps you to get kind of the proportion of what's underneath, right? So her bottom lip sits like that, maybe slightly. So now I'm going to have a go at drawing the edges. So I can see, so I know automatically now which box the side of her head is in, because it's right next to the features basically. I've made that eye much too big. So I can see now that I've made this eye much too big. So I'm going to go back and correct it. It shouldn't go right to the edge. It doesn't go right to the edge of the box here. So you can go back and correct it. So as you work, you can see that some things need correcting, and that's fine. So that's looking better now. So her chin kind of sits there. There, yeah, it's beginning to look like a person now, and like the person I want it to look like. So there we are. So I chose this photo because it's well lit. It's got a dark background, so it's really easy to see her face. But it's slightly at an angle, and she has a lot of hair, and those are the things that can be quite tricky to draw. I think her neck here is more or less on the grid, so that really helps with drawing that line there. It's pretty much on it. This one is about halfway through. And now I want to draw the ear, which, you know, we always say the ear should be lined up, that an ear should be, the top of the ear is more or less lined up with the eyes. Well, it is lined up with that eye. It's not with that one, but that's because of the photo. That's not because of her face. It's just the way the photo is taken. but yeah, they're lined up, and usually the bottom of the ear lines up with the nose. Again, this one's very slightly below the bottom of her nose, but that's more or less where they sit. I think this side of her face should be a bit wider, as I'm making her ear look very big. And we'll do a drawing on top of this in a moment where you can refine it. So this is just the first go. So I always do at least 2 sketches before I even ink an outline when I'm doing it on here. If you're doing this on paper, you can print out a grid and print out a grid, then put your photo, put the grid paper back in your printer, and then print the photo, and you should have the photo in the printer, the photo and the grid on the same sheet. If you're gonna, and you could print out a grid as well, just to draw on, if you're happy to use whatever paper you've got in your printer. If you want to do it in your sketchbook, you're going to have to draw a grid for this side, for the drawing, but you can still use a photo that you've printed out that has both the grid and her photo on it. And if you're watching this and you have a tablet but you don't have an iPad, the site that I put on the schoolyard has online grids, so you can just take a grid into whatever drawing program you use. It's not going to be quite the same as being able to kind of bespoke your grid like we can here, but still there's a grid that you can just borrow. So I'm just looking at her hair now, which is, you can't really see where it goes to because it's so dark. The first bit goes like this, and then this bit comes down here somewhere. I'm not really bothering being accurate with the hair because it's hair. Yeah, that's more or less the right place anyway. And then we want hair on the other side. I was really curious when I was looking at how her curls fell here. She's got these really lovely kind of round. In fact, they go right to the edge of that box, don't they? And then I'll put in her clothing. I'm not going to bother with the necklace. So I'm just looking now to see if I need to move things before I think this hair comes down more there, before we go on to the next layer. But I think that's it. So, and we can adjust things in the next layer. So once I've got a first one just down, then I go up here, make another layer. And with this first layer, I'm going to tap that in to just lower the opacity, because I'm going to draw on top of it, but I don't want it to be a really strong drawing. So I've taken it down quite a long way. That's because my lines were really dark. So once you've lowered the opacity to where you want it to be, you can lock that layer so you don't draw on it. So you lock it by swiping it to the left and just clicking the lock button. And then we're going to work in this layer on top. So, oh, sorry, just dropped my iPad. So Deb, you were asking about using clipping masks, and this is one area where I always use the clipping mask. So once I've done my drawing in this color, I'll go up here, create another layer on top, and it doesn't matter. So just go to the layer on top of it, tap it, and all of these come up. If you want to turn off your grid, you just click Drawing Assist. But what we want to do is create a clipping mask. So you click here where it says clipping mask. And then I want to change the color. Actually, I might increase the opacity a little bit, because I've made it so pale now that it's going to be hard for you to see what I'm doing. So I'm just going to increase it for a moment. So I'm in the clipping mask layer that's above that. So I almost always draw in like a really dark gray or a dark blue. But then if I'm going to be drawing on top of this in dark grey or dark blue, I need it to be a different colour. So I'm just picking the red that was her lipstick. And because it's a clipping mask, when you move it to the page, the only things that will be affected are the lines that are drawn there. So if I just pull it, you can literally just drag it across, and my sketch is now in red. So I can draw across it with dark blue now. So that's one way of using clipping masks. You can just change the color of your lines. So if you decide you don't like the color, you just change them. If you open up the layer menu, you can see it's made the whole layer red. But because it's a clipping mask, only the lines are affected, or only whatever you've drawn is affected. I'll open up a new canvas.
That's awesome.
It's great. And then you just merge it down. So just tap on your clipping mask layer and tap merge down. And then you're not wasting a layer. You've got nice red. So yeah, if you've done something and then you're like, I really don't like this color, you can just change it in a clipping mask. Right at the end, if you keep your inking in a separate layer, you can change the color of your inking right at the end just by using a clipping mask. I'm just going to go.
Is that like the sole reason of a clipping mask?
No, I'm going to show you another one.
Okay,
I'm just going to open a new canvas, and I'll show you something different. So I'm just going to use some different brushes. In fact, I could just fill that. So if I just fill that with red. So I'm going to create a clipping mask on top of this. And then I'm just going to, I guess it won't work because I've done the whole canvas. Sorry, ignore me. I'm going to go back and redo it. So I'll make a circle. Make a circle. Fill the circle. Oh. there's a little gap somewhere in my line. I'm going to use a marker instead, because markers are so much easier to see the edges. Just for while I'm doing this.
Yeah, I think it does it on a thin, grainy.
Yeah, it's really hard with a pencil, but if I do it with the marker like that, then that's fine. That will just fill in that space. Oh, gonna get rid of the line around the edge because it's annoying. So I filled the space. I'm gonna just lower that opacity a bit so you can see what I'm doing in the next layer. So say I want to, I don't know, you might have a dress or something drawn in one layer. Say you're drawing a whole person and you've got a dress. So you can color it in, but then you want to add a pattern to your dress. So this is textures that I've opened up. And I don't know, let's give it a stripe. So I've chosen a diagonal brush. I'm going to choose a different color. Oh, I need to make a clipping mask before I show you how it works. So I've made a clipping mask above the circle. So now if I use my brush, I need to make that darker. Give me a darker brush. Oh, maybe, why is that so light? I don't understand why that's not showing up very well.
Does it have the same opacity?
It might. Maybe I'll choose a darker. Here we are, cubes. I'll choose a darker pattern. There we are.
Oh, wow.
And it only patterns on whatever's drawn in that layer.
Right.
So
in the layer below.
Yeah. So I mean, next week when we're doing color, I'll show you, because once I've colored the face, I usually do everything else in a clipping mask above the face. So I'll add highlights and shadows and things in a clipping mask above the face. I don't understand why that's. Oh, there we are. Now you can see it better with color burn. And then you can just merge down, or you can keep them as separate layers. But it's just a way of working just on part of your drawing rather than the whole thing. And you don't have to worry about going over the edges because you've got a clipping mask.
That's exactly what I was looking for, because I wanted, you know, like when you stamp the fox on or whatever, but then I forgot to put a background behind him. Yeah. And so I wanted to be able to, you know, confine where I want my background to go. And that's
so I mean, let me just duplicate. In fact, I don't need to duplicate. I've got a stamp. If you want to add texture to the fox, you can just make a clipping mask above him and then find a brush that gives some sort of texture. Oh, let me have a look for something that gives an interesting texture. Maybe the newsprint one. Just find something that gives it a bit of texture, because it's a stamp. Because this is black, it's probably best to use white or something whitish. And then you can just.
Yeah. And you don't have to worry about staying inside the lines.
No, you don't have to worry about staying inside the lines at all. Obviously, you can make some parts darker than others. You can then put another pattern on top of that. So long as you're in your clipping mask, whatever you do is only going to show.
But now once you merge those layers,
yeah, they can't be unmerged. No.
Okay, I thought I read that somewhere. I just want to make sure I'm understanding.
I mean, they can using the back function. So you can use this back function.
Oh.
But obviously, if you keep on drawing, and you've because I think the back function will only take you back. I can't remember how many strokes, but there's a limit to how many strokes it will take you back. And I often find I can't go as far as I want to. So generally keep a duplicate. I mean, if you're doing this fox and you're just not sure if you're gonna like the texture, you can just do it. And then if you want to undo it, we just click this button here. Or so long as you keep it as a separate layer, you can just tap on it and clear the layer.
You know, I think I think in Procreate, remembering the fact that you're working with layers is can be not difficult. It's just something you've got to remember.
Yeah, and it takes doing it a lot to kind of just get into the habit of doing it. And the good practice things I always say to you, like lock. I very often forget to lock, and then I have to do something again because I've drawn on the wrong layer. But once you learn to use them properly, they're the most useful feature for sure, because they let you do anything really. So I'm going to lock that layer, and I want to draw on top. Next week we'll be adding all the color, and then we'll be using clipping masks a lot, because and I suppose the difference between a clipping mask and that selection tool that I don't like is that selection tool gives you this very clean line, but a clipping mask just clips what you've drawn. So if you've used a brush that has an edge to it, a texture, then it keeps that textured line. It doesn't give you that very smooth digital line that I don't like. I wonder if I can find something to show you that. I mean, I've used clipping masks on so many of these, but I've probably merged them down. Yeah, I think I've merged them down at the end. So, but I always, when I'm doing the clothing as well, I usually do that at the end, and I just color it in, but then I put a clipping mask on and put some texture on top of it so that it's not really flat. So clipping masks are great for creating texture. What have I done? See, I'm clicking all the wrong things here. Let me go back to this. Actually, I can show you in that one that we just did. If you look closely, you can see that it's got a rough edge.
Yeah,
because that's the nature of the brush. If I'd used selection, it wouldn't have a rough edge. It would have this really smooth digital edge. But because I've used a clipping mask and that brush had a nice edge to it, it's kept that kind of furry edge that I really like. So that's why I use those and not selection so much. Those and erasers that leave an edge. I was showing you my erasers earlier, and I've got one which is let me go find them.
I always thought you had to erase with the same brush that you drew with.
No, some people say that's good practice, but I don't. I have these specific. So these three were a set that I bought that are really nice. I use the ghost eraser a lot because it's very pale. It takes very little away. But the other ones that are nice, which again came with another set, are these ones which have a torn edge. So when you're erasing, you get an edge.
And shouldn't you always have like if you've got a colored background, you should use the color picker and make sure you're erasing with the same background color, right? Or does it take up the color of it?
It doesn't use a color when you're erasing.
I've had sometimes where I'm erasing and it brings in white, and I'm not on white. Anyway, I'm not gonna.
I'm just going to try that. I don't think it makes a difference. So I've just gone on to brown and I'm going to erase. Yeah, I'm on the wrong layer. It's not working. That's why. Unlock. Yeah, there's no brown. It's just taking the color away. I don't think it matters.
I'll have to play some more.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it's an eraser, I don't think it matters at all. So now we've done this, we're going to lock that layer again and then draw over it. So you can use a different brush if you didn't like that brush, you can go find another one. So if I go back to drawing, sketching, So the very dark rough brush is what I usually use for my first go. I like the peppermint, which obviously you won't have 1 and 2. Those are things that I've played with, but the peppermint without a number after it comes with Procreate. Or the Procreate pencil is quite nice as well. It's just below it. Maybe we use the Procreate pencil. And again, I'm going to go back to sort of dark blue color. And now you can draw over it. You're in a different layer. You've gridded for accuracy. So you know that the features are more or less in the right place. So you can just now do a much freer drawing on top. So I'm going to start with her eyes.
Which pencil are you using now?
I think I'm using the Procreate pencil.
Oh,
and I've got a dark blue color.
Not the 6B?
No. Because I don't want my lines to be really heavy.
Okay.
With this one.
Oh, okay. I see it. So it's not the streamline and it's not the color burned.
No, this one isn't color burned. This is just a regular Procreate pencil.
Yeah, I went to my one of my folders there for brushes and found it.
And I would kind of say when you're doing this, use that's not right, is it? Use what you've drawn below as a guide, but don't worry too much about sticking to it and being totally accurate, because you don't want a hyper realistic. Well, maybe you do. If you do, then yes, really focus on getting those lines in the right place. But I generally, when doing this layer, I'll just draw and not worry too much about being absolutely on top of the lines, because I don't want realism. I did when I first started using Procreate, and I'd used it for about 2 years. All my portraits were becoming really hyper realistic, and I didn't like them. So, because they just didn't feel like they had any personality. So, and that's why I'm saying don't worry too much about where your lines are sitting now, because you know that your features are in more or less the right place. So now it's more about drawing the way, you would normally draw. If you're doing it on paper, then obviously you can use different colored pencils. What I tend to use, which I've kept here, for either the first or the second layer, I've got this non-photo blue pencil. Sorry, let me show. So I have, it's Caran d'Ache, so the Swiss pencil company, and it's called a Sktchy non-photo blue pencil. And this color isn't supposed to show up when you photograph or photocopy it. I find it still does a little bit, but not very much. So I will often start out with that and then use the regular pencil for the next layer. And then when you're on the third layer, my third layer would be inking. But sometimes I'll do more than 3 layers. So if I do this and I'm still not happy with it, I'll do another sketching layer. And also sometimes I'll ink it, finish the whole drawing, and then decide that I need to redraw the lines or remove them. So the thing about using an iPad is nothing is final. So you don't, the lines you have now, you don't have to keep. It also doesn't matter if they're a bit sketchy, because you can obviously right at the end erase some of those sketchy details. So sometimes I'll draw in, for example, where the shadows are. So like there's a shadow here, so I can draw this in, knowing that I can get rid of that later. I'll just remove it. So that can help sometimes, just drawing in the shadows as you're going, so you can see where they are later, and then you can remove them. So
you could even do that in a different color, right?
Yeah.
If you want
to. Yeah. I'll sometimes have 3 or 4 layers until I've got something that I'm happy with. But you can do it as much as you like. It doesn't matter. And I always right at the end, and I'll show you this when we've colored it, we'll do this. Right at the end, I'll go in and play with some of the lines that I've drawn. So I'll erase them lightly so they're lighter. I'll usually turn down the opacity of the whole line drawing at the end, but I like having the lines in there. But you could take the lines out completely at the end if you really wanted to. So I usually do take them out to see how it looks, and I never like it, so I always put them back. But you can remove them. So this is, the second layer is just much freer. All the layers that you do on top will be quicker. It's the first layer where you're just trying to look and make sure everything is in the right place. That takes a long time. So I'm not worrying about how her hair sits now here. I'm just drawing it the way I want to draw it, which is fine. And then if you want to see what you've got, I'm just looking, I haven't done the inside of her ear. And she has an earring, so we'll put that on. If you want to see what you've got, you can then go back up here, open your layers, and you can unlock this layer and turn it off. So unlock, turn it off by clicking the box. And then you have this line drawing. And that's what we'll work on next week. But I'm gonna erase those shadow lines because I don't like them. They're off-putting. Might need to make my eraser a bit smaller. You don't have to erase if you've done this. You can just use the back button and just go back a few steps. So if you do something and you don't like it, just, I'm on the wrong layer. No, I'm not. Why isn't that erasing?
That's what I usually get.
Yeah, I don't understand why that's not. Oh, it is. I just needed it to be bigger. My eraser was too small, I think. I think it was too small. Yeah. So, yeah, it doesn't entirely look like her as I'm looking at it now. But we know that the features are right. So, and I often find that until I've put eyelashes on people, they always look slightly weird. You can turn, if you want to turn the drawing off, you can now. Oh, that didn't work. Oh no, it's giving me drawing assist. Oh, I'll have to go into the canvas. So you'll have to, if you want to turn it off, you'll have to go up here, I think, into the canvas layer. So into that and turn off there. Just toggle off and it disappears. And then you've got your drawing. But you might want to keep that. Maybe we'll keep it on for adding color. But what I might do is make it a bit paler because it's obviously we made it very thick and strong so that we could see it while we were drawing over the black. But you can make it lighter. So I'll just turn down the opacity over here and reduce the thickness. There, now I've only got a very light grid, which will be useful when we're adding color next week. So I'm just looking at the time. We maybe do have time to add some ink, or at least I'll start adding some ink so you can see what I do next. So first of all, lock both layers that you're not going to be drawing on. So swipe them to the left and press lock. And then on layer 3, I'll usually pick up an inker. I didn't put an inker in that set yet because I didn't think we were going to be doing this today. I have got one from when we did their stamps, the studio pen. So we could just use the studio pen, which is in, if you haven't got a set already made, it's in the, I think it's in the inking. I'm going to check. Yeah, it's in the inking set. In fact, it's about halfway down. So if you go to the inking set, which are the ones with a little nib next to them, then, so that one there, there's a studio pen in there. The other one that I really like drawing with, which is in here, I think. Or maybe it's not, maybe it's in the drawing set. Yeah, it must be. So I like using the studio pen, and I like, if I can find it, where is it? Drawing. Nope, it's not in drawing. Where is it then? Maybe it is an inking and I've just missed it. Oh, there it is, an inking. There it is. The dry ink. This one, which is really nice. So that's in the inking set too. Maybe I'll use dry ink. The dry ink is really textured and nice. So you can, if you want to change the color of this, if you're going to be inking over in black, maybe we'll change the color. So we'll do the clipping mask again. So we need to unlock that layer in order to do a clipping mask. Then tap on the layer above till the menu appears, and then choose clipping mask in that menu. And you know you've got a clipping mask because you get this little arrow here, which tells you that it's masked to the layer below. So I'm just going to change the color now. So maybe I'll just have green because that's not a color I know I'm going to be using. So pull up your color, put your pencil on there and swipe it across until it's on the, didn't go, There it is. It's there now. You can see that because the color drop goes with you. And now it's green. So I'm going to be able to see when I go over it with black ink, I'll be able to see where my lines are. So, and you can just merge that layer down. So tap it and then choose merge down. So we've got a red portrait and a green one so far. And then if you're going to ink, I mean, I usually ink in a bluey, blacky, grey. Sometimes I'll just pull up. So if you pull up your palette and then just tap here, it comes up on blue because I use blue all the time for drawing. I'll just choose something randomly from across here. I don't have a set color. I'll just use whatever. So we only have about 7 minutes left. So do you want to share your work, or would you rather just keep going? Just looking at the time. Shall we?
Yeah, well, I'm good for keeping going.
Yeah.
I
Shall
think
we try and just ink it? Yeah.
Yeah, I think she looks pretty good.
Yeah, good. So once you've got an inking color, we want another layer. So I've made a layer above, and then we're just going to go over it just with ink. So exactly the same process. I always draw the eyebrows in with ink. Don't worry if it looks really hard and heavy, because remember that when we finish the portrait, we can remove the lines, those lines that we're drawing. So I'll color in and create pencil marks in her eyebrows. And then when I said to you, right at the end, I'll often go in and remove some of the lines that I don't want. I always remove, or almost always remove, the eyebrow lines or make them lighter. So don't worry about putting in really strong eyebrow lines and thinking, oh, I don't like the way they look, because you can remove them. At the moment,
what are you using for your ink?
I've just picked in that palette that came from the photo. I've used this one, the blue, kind of bluey black there. So in my palette, it's towards the end. I don't know if it's in the same place in yours. I'm quite curious to know whether
I went to the top.
So yours is in a different place. Interesting.
I don't know if that's a setting, or I did scroll up to the top before I imported the palette.
Don't know.
Hey, we're inking.
Yes, we're inking. And if you want to draw more lines than I do to help you draw, then do, because you can remove them at the end if you want to. You can remove anything. So, I mean, she doesn't have many creases in her face or shadows anyway, but quite often I'll draw in all the lines and all the shadows because they help me figure out where I'm going to put color. And then at the end, I'll just take them out and just remove them. So I'm being even freer with my lines now. I'm not really looking at the picture of her now, just because I don't want it to be hyper realistic. I want it to be more the way that I draw. So I'm using my drawing as a guide rather than the lines I've drawn. Rather than the photo is what I meant to say.
I'm kind of averaging between the different colors I have for drawings underneath.
I think it's such a nice way of just using different colors. And then later, when you come back to it, you can see how you worked and how things changed. It's quite nice if you do a time lapse as well and share it. I think if you have different colors, I think it helps people watching a time lapse to understand what you did when. So this brush is slightly streamlined, so you can do these really nice and slightly tapered as well at the end. So you can do these kind of really nice sweepy strokes. So I'm going to draw the hair that goes across her neck, and I may remove that line at the end. But right now I'm going to draw it to help me. So this is a really nice brush for drawing. I've done some classes. Sorry.
I like her hair. Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice. It's not that hard to draw, which wavy hair often can be. I've taken some classes with illustrators especially, who only use the same brush for everything. So I think that's how I found the studio brush, which I'd never really used. And then I did a class, and the illustrator said that's the only brush she uses and she does the colour for everything. And it never occurred to me to make it really thick and add colour with it, but I do occasionally now. So, and then we have an ink drawing that we can work on next week. So, and you can turn, if you want to, you can turn, no, that doesn't look good. You can turn the bottom layer off if you want to. So I'm going to put these lines in. I always remove, when I'm drawing digitally, almost all the lines I do for hair. So I will quite happily put them in at this point because I know that they're all going to go. Because when you're drawing hair, it really helps if you know the flow of the lines you're doing, or it helps me anyway. And I know that I'm going to remove them, so I don't worry about how heavy they might look. So, and then, that was good timing, we're right at the end. So if you want to remove your layer below, you can just unlock it. So swipe to the left, unlock it, don't delete it. You might, I sometimes find that I've been working on something, adding color for an hour or two, and then I really don't like it. And at that point, I'll remove all the color layers and go right back to one of my, I might go back to this layer or that layer and start again. But if you've deleted these, you can't. So keep them until the end, because you might decide that you want to go back and start again. So turn it off by tabbing the little square there, and then lock it again so that you don't draw on that layer. So sometimes I'll take away the first drawing. If I need layers, I'll remove the first one, but keep the second one. But we won't have a problem with layers. And I was just looking at this and her eyes look so strange, but that's because she doesn't have any eyelashes or color, so don't worry about it. We can change it. So next week, we'll be using lots of clipping masks and we'll be adding color, and we'll use both a paintbrush and a pencil brush to fill it in. And hopefully by the end it will look like her.
Well,
They usually do.
Hopefully they'll get the class downloaded and I'll get caught up.
Yeah. So
Thank you.
Let me just at least put my face on the screen to say goodbye. There we are. So that was fun. I enjoyed that. So
I appreciate the clipping mask.
And have a good Easter, everyone. And I'll see you next week.
You too. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thanks, Helen.
Bye.